it's kind of confounding to try to look at daily moves. What's brought the recent easing from those really high levels? I guess that it's a pendulum swing, and psychology can drive these things to higher than they would normally be with supply and demand. So then there's some settling. What do you think the actual supply-demand dynamics, what is that price right now for oil?
I mean, I'd say there's been three specific reasons why we've sold off. Obviously, we've seen headlines around more lockdowns in China. Case counts have been rising. Case counts are also rising in Korea. So fears about potential mobility restrictions in parts of Asia, that would be a big reason. Second reason, there's some confusion in the market around the impact of sanctions on Russian oil production and oil exports. Loadings data, which is kind of more high-frequency data, doesn't show exports coming off yet, which it isn't meant to, because a lot of this oil was bought by, say, India, China, even some European counterparts pre-sanctions. They are March loaders, i.e. they will load this month. That doesn't mean new oil is being booked. So we are going to see a drop-off probably from the 20th of this month, but not right now. But I know a lot of hedge funds are looking at this data and saying, oh, there's been no impact on Russian oil production, and that's why they're selling. And final thing is there's just a huge dearth of liquidity. Like you said, intraday moves just don't mean anything. We've seen a massive collapse in some ways of credit and liquidity because banks are just being super cautious. A lot more capital is getting tied up in people managing their prompt position because the volatility is so high. And again, when you and margins, ICE increased their margins by 32%. So that's another reason why people have just taken off positions, and we've just seen prices come off.
The big producers, the Saudis, whomever, they're always faced with the notion of, okay, I like high prices, so I don't want to increase supply too much. But when do they decide, you know what, we're going to make some hay while the sun's shining? These are great prices. They may not last forever. We should ramp up production. Is that possible? And when does the domestic production here? When do we turn everything back on, and how long does it take?
So I think there is a bit of kind of a misconception around OPEC in terms of that they really enjoy high prices. Of course, I would say that they are more proactive in defending the downside in oil prices and tend to be reactive when prices are higher, for sure. But they themselves don't necessarily want prices to be sustaining above $100, because ultimately that can hurt long-term demand. And for them, for OPEC as a group, they do see oil in the long-term energy mix, and they don't necessarily want a transition away from oil. So there is a balance to be struck. Yes, high prices, they do favor that, but not high prices above $100. I think I did want to clarify that. The biggest issue with OPEC Plus is the lack of spare capacity. There just isn't very much in the group, and that's why they have been cautious in increasing production. And even when they do increase by 400,000 every month, only half of that is coming online. That's what's really constraining them. As for the U.S., we are seeing rig counts go up a little bit, but there are some serious oil services constraints above ground, labor shortages, equipment shortages, and that's been that will be one of the biggest headwinds in increasing production very sharply, despite high prices.
Yeah. Hey, Amrita, what's the story with Russian oil getting to market? I'm confused. I've seen some reports that Russian oil companies are allowing a Chinese state company to take oil on letters of credit. And then you got to kind of divide it into two pieces, right? Because there's a piece of Russian oil that gets to market because it arrives by pipeline, but it's the part that comes by ship that's unclear. What is the market? What is the reality of Russian oil getting to market, and what does the market think about it?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was saying at the start, right? What the market thinks of it is very much based on tanker tracking data, and that's not showing much of a movement. But to your point, oil that comes to Europe by pipe will continue. These are long-term contracts. Oil that comes to Europe by ships, nobody really is taking new oil right now. Whatever has loaded is fine. That will arrive. So we need to give some time. So that's over 2 million barrels per day of oil by ship. China and India will take that oil, and that's what they're working through. Potentially no letters of credit, potentially payment in rupees or Chinese yuan. So those are the things they need to work out. Then there's another pipeline that goes from Russia to China, ESPO. That, again, is continuing, and that's where you've seen reports that China isn't giving any letters of credit, but that oil can continue to flow.